Alright, team, so we are back, of course, to talk about some Final Fantasy VII Remake, and about a month ago we did a video talking about the Barret is dead theory, and I mentioned near the end of the video that we talk at some point about sort of the ending, the effects it has, and all that other shit. When it comes to the ending of Remake Part 1, the biggest WTF moment, of course, is Zack surviving, but also the biggest question that comes out of that is what does it mean? What is the impact of Zack surviving going to be? It's very heavily implied that Zack surviving takes place in a different timeline with the stamp logo on the bag of chips or whatever it is. Even the devs have talked about that, like pointed that out, like, hey, did you notice that the dog was different? Like to imply that maybe that's not taking place in our world. Also then pointing out that Zack and Cloud both have a Buster Sword, but Cloud got the Buster Sword from Zack whenever he died, so how is it possible that they're both wielding the same weapon? Again, very heavy-handedly pointing out it's a different timeline. So I understand it, I get it, Zack survived in a different timeline, it makes sense. Sort of. My question is, okay, we killed the Whisperers, so Zack survives instead of dying in the fight with the Shinra, kill squad. How does that affect us if it's in a different timeline? So for the sake of this discussion, we'll say that Zack's timeline is Universe 1, the Remake's timeline is Universe 2. Him surviving in Universe 1 has no effect on us, right? He's already dead in our timeline. At the current point we are in the FF7 story, us escaping from Midgar, Zack's been dead for a few months. In the FF7 timeline, he died at the end of September. Cloud joins up with Avalanche somewhere around December of whatever year that all takes place. So in the Remake's timeline, it's not even possible for him to be alive. He'd be decomposing at this point, assuming that members of soldiers can decompose. The only way it makes sense for Zack to survive and it affect our story is if we hop to the timeline in which he did survive. And this is actually entirely possible. If you guys remember, prior to the events of all this taking place, with Sephiroth on the highway, he cuts a portal out of thin air, essentially, and we go through it to another dimension to fight the Whisperers and the Whisper Harbinger and all that shit. And with us knowing that this Sephiroth has knowledge of all the different timelines and universes and stories that have happened for FF7, and obviously the ability to take us to other dimensions, possibly worlds or universes, there's nothing saying that he put us back in the Remake timeline. All we ever see is us defeat Sephiroth, and then Cloud and Sephiroth have that talk at the edge of creation, and then the next time we see our group, they're just on the outskirts of Midgar. We never see the in-between of all that. And part of why I do think we hop to maybe Zack's timeline is because, again, him surviving wouldn't really affect us unless it's a part of our story. Would they be showing us the ongoing story of Universe 1 with Zack, and then our story, Universe 2? I don't think they'd be showing two different separate stories. I think it'd be a part of the same story. A separate timeline where Zack survives and you get to actually see what all takes place sounds pretty badass, but also sounds like fan fiction. I don't think they would be doing that or showing Zack surviving unless it's going to affect us. And I do think Zack's going to be a part of, or possibly a big part of, Remake Part 2 and possibly ongoing with, however many games there's going to be. My other big question here is, okay, Zack survives. Again, how does that affect the story? Because him surviving changes a lot of shit. You could still have the overall gist of the story. Sephiroth went crazy, prior to Zack dying and shit. So you could still have, Sephiroth coming to Midgar, trying to destroy the planet and all this shit. The story could still play out relatively the same with Zack involved. But Zack surviving changes some shit. For one, Cloud wouldn't get the Buster Sword. Cloud wouldn't have the broken past or memories, because anytime he'd talk about things that he think he did, Zack would correct him and be like, no, bro, that was me. Zack surviving and taking Cloud to Midgar means that he would also get to meet up with Aerith again, and who knows how that would affect the story as well. With her being the last Ancient, she's obviously very important to the overall Final Fantasy VII story, and ultimately, by the end, she's the one that actually protects the planet by summoning Holy from the Lifestream. But with Zack surviving, how would the story change? Because would she ever even go on the journey with Cloud and everybody to try to save the planet? Would she ever even leave Midgar? And the other glaring issue here is, okay, we hop to a different timeline, a different world where Zack survives. There'd be two of certain characters. There'd be two Clouds, two Tifas, two Aeriths, two Barretts, two Red 13s. And obviously that's an entire crazy mindfuck situation by itself. How does that story play out with multiples of characters? Also, with Zack surviving and taking Cloud to Midgar, Cloud wouldn't be found by Tifa in the slums, and she wouldn't have taken him in, and him helping and joining Avalanche. Realistically, the story may not even play out the same at all. I remember when the game first came out, or maybe prior to the game coming out, whenever people got early copies and stuff was leaking online and all that shit, people were making jokes about the game being very Nomura, very Kingdom Hearts-esque. And honestly, as we're sitting here talking about it, I have to agree. It's a crazy situation with these different worlds and timelines, and who knows what's even going on. I love that I don't know. I love that we can play something that's essentially FF7, but there's a lot of fucking questions, and we need a lot of answers. I like that. I like being able to speculate and talk and discuss. But it's what is going on, man? Because the ramifications of Zack surviving changes a lot of shit. And again, you can have the overall plot of Sephiroth want to destroy Gaia. But a big part of the Final Fantasy VII story is trying to discover Cloud's past, and that story's not there if Zack lives. I've seen some people talk about and speculate that maybe Zack will be a playable character, with part 2 and beyond. And honestly, it'd be cool. It'd be cool to have like Cloud and Zack fighting side by side, like not Crisis Core Cloud, where he's kind of somewhat useless. He's not as strong as he is now, where he's infused with Mako and he's using the Buster Sword and shit. It'd be kind of cool to have those two fighting together. But realistically, if that was the case, Zack and Cloud would probably fight pretty much the same, right? They're both very agile guys, jumping around, flipping and shit, and using the Buster Sword. So it'd be like using two of the exact same character. I mean, I'm not against it, but it wouldn't be unique. Like, their fighting styles would be relatively the same. But maybe a way around that would be, like, part 2, we could get to have playable segments as Zack. Like, maybe the group, Cloud and everybody goes forward into Calm and Junon and all that shit, continues with the FF7 story. But maybe in certain parts of chapters, or maybe chapters as a whole, we get to go back to Midgar as Zack and get to kind of play out his story, see what's happening with him. And maybe sometime around the end of part 2, Cloud and Zack meet up, and that's whenever it's the revelation to our party that they're in a different timeline, because Zack's supposed to be dead. This is all just pure off the top of the head speculation, man. There's no evidence to support any of this happening, but it sounds kind of cool. And also, us killing the Whisperers, like, in the timeline and world where Zack survived, like, what else did killing the Whisperers change, right? Like, you could go through every single beat of the plot and story of FF7 and talk about things being different, man. Who knows what else has changed? And I know, like, the hardcore, die-hard FF7 fans out there don't like this stuff, and that's perfectly fine, You still have the original Final Fantasy VII if you want to play it. I'm all for this stuff, man. I'm all for some different stuff. I'm curious as to what it all means. I can't wait to get, like, that first trailer. I hope when we get our first trailer for part 2, it's not just, like, a little small teaser. Like, I hope we get a decent trailer, and it has, like, Zack stuff in it. Like, show us what the hell it all means, man. We're kind of all over the place with this video. There's all kinds of different things you could give your thoughts on. But ultimately, what do you think about the different timeline stuff? Do you think we're still, when it comes to part 2, are we still in the remake's timeline? Universe 2, essentially. Do we hop back to the original Final Fantasy VII's timeline, which is something we didn't really talk about in this video? Or do we hop to the new timeline where Zack survives? And something else I forgot to mention that kind of implies that something major happened is Marlene sensing Barret at the end of Remake, which is very parallel to the actual ending of Final Fantasy VII, where Marlene senses Aerith, like, summoning up Holy from the livestream or whatever to protect the planet. Like, she senses Barret or something at the end of the Remake. But maybe right here at the end where she calls out to Barret is because she no longer feels his presence in her timeline. Like, maybe she felt him hopping timelines or going to another world or some shit. Like, she has some sort of weird connection to the planet. We don't exactly know what it is. Anyways, we need to wrap it up because I could sit and ramble about this shit all day long. Just let me know your thoughts below. Like, what do you think is going on? Like, what the hell is happening when it comes to Remake Part 2 with the different timelines and all that other shit? Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Once I did more Final Fantasy VII Remake content. Turn on my notifications. Follow me on Twitter at @dashingdavid. I'm on Discord. Links to my social networks are in the description and in the outro. Later, guys.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.